The college football playoff is on the edge of a total redesign, and Clemson's future access to a national title could depend on it. We'll talk about it right here on Locked On Clemson.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Tiger fans? Morgan Thomas here, Clemson fan, Clemson grad, host and producer of this show, and part-time host and producer over at 105.5 FM The Roar. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you're new to the show, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And for our everydayers, you already know how it goes here on Locked On. Exclusive Clemson content Monday through Friday, every single week. And don't forget, in between episodes, you can follow me over on X, where we can talk about all things Clemson at the Morgan T Show. Today's episode is the last episode of May, and it's going to dive into the playoff formatting and some of the changes that could happen that are being discussed right now and how it could shape Clemson's future. So let's jump right into it, shall we? There's two different kind of formats that's being discussed now. Originally, it was the 4-4-2-2-1, 4 SEC teams, 4 Big Ten teams, 2 Big 12 teams, 2 ACC teams, and 1 either Notre Dame or if they were the highest ranked team, or a group of 5 team that was the highest ranked. So that was what I thought, and I assumed that they would be going with for the next couple of seasons, not this next season, but going on, in 2026 and forward. But now that doesn't seem to be the case. There seems to be a little bit of a problem with that. The playoff format is kind of in a backroom debate right now, but it's not really a backroom debate literally, because it's all about who controls access to the national championship game and how to get there. And honestly, my first thought, and a lot of fans have messaged me and said, well, Morg, we should go with the 4-4-2-2-1, because for sure Clemson's going to be one of the better teams in the ACC, so they'll always get that one of the two. And I said, not so fast, because what happens is when you give teams 4 automatic bids, then the rumors were that they were going to start doing their own little mini play-in tournament. And that's going to get more eyeballs, that's going to have more pressure, and then also that's going to allow lower seeded teams in this play-in tournament to be able to make it into the playoffs while you're sitting around having to be one of the 2 best teams. Plus, don't forget, 4-4-2-2-1 is just 13 teams. You still got other at-large bids that are in that scenario as well. So I think that while it does seem on the surface, hey, the ACC, give them 2 automatic rather than none, or rather than 1, there's a lot of discussion now about the 5+11, which is kind of what we already have anyways. But there's some more pushback, and maybe we should go in with this 5+11. Right now, the SEC and the Big Ten are considering both formats, and the first format gives, the 5+11 gives the 5 conference champions, the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, the Big 12, and a group of 5 for the conference champions to be able to get in. So that's how you get your 5. And then the 11 would be at-large bids, which seems like, if you have a lot of high-ranking teams, that would make sense. That's what you would want. 16 teams in there to be able to get you to having 11 at-large, so 11 of the highest-ranking teams after the first 5. Now, that may not look so good for the ACC on the surface, because they don't generally have a lot of high-ranking teams compared to the Big Ten and the SEC. I get it. But when we're looking at Clemson specifically, which is the only team we really care about, it really kind of makes you think maybe that's what we should do. That's what we should push for. You're going to get an automatic bid for winning your championship, and then you're not going to be able to have this play-in tournament extravaganza live on primetime ESPN. You're not going to be able to get all of that where your 6th seed goes in there. But maybe your 6 seeds does still get in there because you have 16 teams, but at least they're ranked one of the better teams out there. And so Clemson can definitely be one of the best 16 teams in the country almost every single year, I would assume. So I have a ton of confidence for that to be an at-large team. And I have a lot of confidence that they'd be one of the winners of their conference. And it still focuses in on a conference champion and making that really important, because the 4-4-2-2-1 didn't really make the conference championship matter for the big conferences. You know, it gave them more mulligans, if you will, for not winning or making it to the championship game, and no mulligans for the ACC and the Big 12. Those two teams that made it. And you know how it happened this year? It kind of was like, well, the SMU didn't win the championship game. Should Miami go in? So it kind of gives you that debate of why shouldn't you let the team that didn't even make it in go in? And so I think there was a lot of problems with the 4-4-2-2-1 that we're starting to think about now. Maybe the 5+11 is what we want. The second option, you know, gives guaranteed spots, or that four team spots. And I just don't like that. I don't like that. To me, that seems like a huge power grab for sure. Clemson should be rooting. As I'm looking at it, I think Clemson should be rooting for the 5+11. It preserves a pass for Clemson to get, you know, through just being a high-ranked teams. Doesn't involve much politicking other than just getting into your championship game, which everybody else is forced into their championship game as well. And I love that, because you need to respect conference championships. Whether you believe that the conference is better or worse than other conferences, you win your league you're in. You got to have leagues, because the college football is too big. You got to break it up into divisions or leagues or whatever you're going to do, even if there's a super league. Clemson historically dominates the ACC, so I think either or would thrive. But to me, a 5+11 would probably thrive more, because you're not giving up those 11 to automatic bids for other conferences. So I like that. Whether or not, to me, TV deals matter or not, I think the 4-4-2-2-1 gives the SEC and the Big Ten better opportunities for that championship week, whereas Clemson and the Big 12 or the ACC will be fighting for their championship game. I think that going and sticking to a 5+11 is really fun to see, now that we know that there's a battle between the SEC and the Big Ten. It's not just the SEC and the Big Ten together. The Big Ten has a lot of different networks that aren't the SEC involved, and they want to be able to not just cater to what the SEC and ESPN want. And so to me, I like that. Now, while we know that the SEC and the Big Ten are going to get a little bit higher share of revenue, this battle really reflects a growing fear that the SEC and the Big Ten want to pull away from everybody else. And they've already got a little bit more of the revenue share. We know that. They control, if we allow them to control the automatic bids, that's going to be a problem for the team, for the sport on a national level. Whatever happens, I do not want Clemson to be left out. And I think when you allow more automatic bids like the 4-4-2-2-1, my problem there is that it is kind of the SEC and the Big Ten, and everybody else is just hoping to be perfect. And I don't like that at all. 5+11 gets my vote for now that we're talking about it. All right, we're going to continue the show talking about should the committee that we have. Coming up next, we're going to talk about should the committee be replaced by a computer model and go back in time. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. I'm taking a look at the sportsbook right now. The Cincinnati Reds and the Chicago Chicago Cubs are on because there's no NBA playoffs tonight. But you're looking at Kyle Tucker, TJ Friedel, Ellie De La Cruz, and Pete Crow Armstrong in a parlay, a same game parlay to get you plus 1,675 on a $5 wager could win you over $100. Go check that out over on FanDuel.com. New to FanDuel, it's perfect time to sign up. Head over to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. The selection committee might have its days numbered, and Clemson fans should be kind of cautious about how this all shakes out and what might replace it. The SEC coaches this week criticized the College Football Playoff Committee and their reliance on losses and stats like that instead of strength of schedule, which you knew that they were going to be frustrated with. I mean, because a lot of their marquee teams lost games that they really shouldn't have lost. Some of the coaches are now even suggesting that they should return to a BCS style model that uses data, get this, algorithms, get this, analytics, and all from a computer to determine the actual rankings. They're saying that the committee is not fair. They're showing clear frustration with some of the subjectiveness of the human influence. But for Clemson, I believe that honestly, it's worked out pretty good. I don't know of a time where I could say Clemson got hosed at all by any of the committees. You know, they've been able to get into the Final Four most often. And I think the Final Four, when you look back, were the best four teams that were in college football. I think when you look back at this last year, I think it was a great playoff atmosphere. One thing that I didn't like more than just the fact of who was picking the teams is honestly that they were sitting in a hotel lobby with really hard and ugly, uncomfortable looking chairs. Not a lobby, but like a conference room, watching football together. They looked like they were miserable. I mean, get the committee some movie theater chairs and maybe even a movie theater. Why don't you that is big enough screens and, you know, treat these people better than just sitting on these hard, ancient looking chairs. I just hated it. Ugh. But really what I hated was that, you know, we didn't get to see home games all throughout the college football playoffs. I really liked Clemson going to play in Austin. And I liked all the first round games. And I hated that the best of college football did not at least get one home game. I think that they should fix that. That's my thing. I want to see the best of college football for that season get a home game, not the first rounders get a home game. I think the best of the best should also get a home game. And then as you get into the semifinals or finals, then you could go into, okay, now you're not playing a home game. You're playing a neutral site game. But I know that'll never happen. But I do love the home game atmosphere. The Notre Dame atmosphere was amazing. The Texas atmosphere was amazing. The Arizona State atmosphere was amazing. It was really awesome to see. Clemson should be very, very cautious about ditching the committee because I don't think, you know, they've generally treated Clemson fair. You know, I don't think that the computer model will treat Clemson unfair at all. Depends on how it's built. You know, if it's purely mathematical, it could reward teams that, you know, pass some sort of mathematical test. You know, it just depends on how the algorithm, if you will, is all built, because all that is built by someone behind the scenes, right? So to me, I think overall, I'm not really frustrated with where the committee has placed Clemson in the top. They've placed them in the top four with one loss many times. They've placed them in the playoffs, even though they really didn't have the best season overall last season. Strength of schedule should matter. But I do think that the SEC really puts a lot of clout around that, and they don't want to admit that they just lost their best teams lost to some of their worst teams. You know, Ole Miss lost to Florida, Alabama, lost to Vanderbilt. You know, so you're talking about your best teams not having success because they just had a loss, but it wasn't just a loss. You know, it wasn't just that they played all these great teams and they just had a loss or more than one loss. It was that they didn't get into their conference championship game, and they also lost to a dumb team, a team that they shouldn't have lost to. Clemson lost to teams that last season. They lost 3 games, but all to very, very good teams that were competitive teams, not to some team they should have blown out or nobody expected. There was not like some drastically crazy loss for Clemson. And then because of just how it happened, they worked their way back into the championship game and won that game. So they had to work their way back. The teams that we're complaining about with strengths of schedule versus wins and losses are those teams that just couldn't claw their way back into it. And fate just wasn't good for them. To me, does a computer model favor the SEC? I don't know. It depends. It really depends on how that algorithm is built. So before you go throw out the committee, you got to show me why the committee was bad, and maybe I'm missing something. If I'm missing something, I'm sure the everydayers will let me know. But I don't know if I feel like the committee was that unfair. I just think it's the SEC griping and complaining. I know that humans can't be perfect. I know that there may already be a bias baked into the decisions from humans right now towards the Big Ten or the SEC. But they do have representation from the ACC and other conferences there too. So it kind of tries to fight out that bias. I think that there has been transparency. I like to see on Sundays I think it's Sundays where they come out and they have their interview and they talk about why they picked what they picked and the struggles that they had, because the struggles that the committee had and the debates and the rationale and the transparency that they had to go through, I think made a lot of sense. Was a lot of the same arguments that we had on the radio that we've had here on Locked On. And so I don't really hate the committee. For whatever reason, the SEC hates them, and I think it's because of last season. But with a computer system, I get it. You remove any of that debate, rationale, any narrative, but it all depends on how things are built. And computer systems and algorithms aren't always the best. You think about video games. How often do they go out and they think they have this great video game, and then they have to tweak it here and there, or a card game or whatever it may be? Things aren't perfect from the beginning. So even if they do change to something like this, they will, in my opinion, have to update it as it goes. I think we'll just go through a cycle. If we go back to this computer system, we'll like it for 5-6 years, and then we'll hate it. And then we'll say we need a committee. It just seems like corporate America to me. This is how we do things. Oh, we need to do this promotion. This promotion's going to save our whole quarter. Well, Bob, we did that promotion 10 years ago and it didn't work. Well, I know, but that was 10 years ago, and now we're going to do it this year because it's going to work this year. I know that there are all different kind of nuances, and it's not just black and white. But to me, I don't really think Clemson has fallen victim to any kind of committee. And maybe they will in the future, and then I'll just absolutely blow up and just kind of maybe bookmark this video so you'll know kind of to come back at me when I blow up after Clemson gets hosed, right? But I don't think there's anything wrong in revisiting it. You want to make sure that you have the best representation across college football. But I don't think that we should say that it's broken, because to me, it just doesn't seem that way. I'm not convinced that it's completely broken right now. All right, we're going to finish out the show, the May show, the last show of May, with a discussion on why a 9th conference game could hurt Clemson more than help them. Could the ACC move to a 9-game schedule? How's this going to affect Clemson? Clemson could lose some matchup that we love the most. It may not be that pushover game that gets kicked out. Could it be a game like Georgia, LSU, Notre Dame, Oklahoma? One of those big-time games that you've been circling for 10 years, has a contract in place. Could one of those games go to the wayside? Now, the Big Ten already plays 9 conference games, and that's why they're really kind of pushing for everyone else to get on the same page. They haven't said that exclusively about the ACC or the Big 12, but they've definitely said that the SEC needs to follow suit and show some fairness and have a 9-game conference. I'm sure that the ACC would want to entertain that and follow suit as well to kind of be on an even playing field and make sure that everyone works well together, which doesn't seem to be the case right now. There's a lot of fighting going back and forth. Clemson's current schedule is built around 8 games in the ACC. And you know how it's always been. It hadn't always been 8, I guess, but it's been this way for a while. And I've seen that you have your 8 ACC games, and they're not always the most exciting ACC games. Don't get me wrong. I'm not always excited about playing every single ACC team. I'd love to be in the Big Ten. I'd love to be in the SEC. I get where you're coming from with that. But the 8-team ACC schedule is what we've been used to and we've grown accustomed to because Clemson's had the success to be able to file and contract in 2 lower tier matchups. A great matchup for your final senior day at the end of the season right before South Carolina, or a great military appreciation matchup, right before South Carolina. I love those games, and I think they should keep them, and I think they should keep them in state. I would love to see Furman, Wofford, one of those types of teams get their opportunity against Clemson and help out in-state teams. South Carolina State, those type of teams. I think that at the beginning of the season, Clemson's also play a little bit more difficult of a team like your Appalachian State, like your Troys out there. And I don't know if those games would be the ones that would be removed if you force a 9-game ACC schedule. Because remember, Clemson has 2 marquee games on the calendar, and they're typically like an SEC team at the beginning of the season and then an ACC team or an SEC team at the end of the season. But we know that one's always South Carolina. So you're always going to have South Carolina. You're not going to get rid of that one. You're not going to get rid of the game before South Carolina. So it has to be one of those 2 beginning of the season games. And to me, if you're playing an ACC game and that ACC game includes a team like Notre Dame, then you will probably get rid of the Georgia, the LSU, the Oklahoma. You will keep your Troy, you'll keep your Appalachian State in favor of removing one of the more difficult games because you're bringing in a conference game. Now, you might say I'm crazy, but I think that that's probably would be the first selection for the university because you're not going to want to add in even more difficult out-of-conference schedule when you add in a conference game. So long-term, I see that being bad for Clemson or bad for the teams that they can't play, or bad for these marquee matchups that we've seen because they won't be able to play them. You'll be subbing in one more ACC game and instead getting rid of a good game that you really want. To me, the 8 conference game model works. It challenges Clemson early in the season and late in the season. It preps them and gets them a good tune-up game right before a high-profile rivalry game. And the way they have it scheduled now, it kind of gives them, if you just absolutely lay an egg in the first game against your hard opponent, then you get a reset game the second week. And still gets great exposure for some good teams in the country. And also, if it's not necessarily a great team, it's at least an in-state team that gets exposure. But to me, adding a 9th conference game, I think I just don't see how there's any way to get rid of any of the tune-ups. And that would be a loss overall for television, for playoff preparation, for fans in general. And I know the ACC's depth's been inconsistent. These type of games haven't been always the most exciting. So removing an exciting game instead to play Syracuse or Pittsburgh or Virginia doesn't really add much of the same value or not. So I can see your argument against me, everydayers, where you say, well, Morg, I'd rather just get rid of the App State and the Furmans because, man, some of these games like Wake Forest and Pitt and Syracuse, they're tough, but they're not really that difficult, or California or Stanford. I'd rather just get rid of one of those tune-up games, as you say, and keep one of the marquee games. And a 9th game in the ACC probably would help their strength of schedule more years than not. It would help their playoff criteria. And I don't always know if that's true every single year, though, because sometimes it's quality over quantity. And I think Clemson in their current format right now gains a lot of national recognition because of how they schedule their teams out. It makes the beginning of the season look really good. It makes the end of the season look really good. And it has your tune-up games to where you can take your kids and enjoy half a game and not have to stress about leaving early, if that's what you do. I didn't suggest that you should ever leave a Clemson football game early, but I'm saying if that's what you would do. I think Clemson hasn't been hurt, as we mentioned through the whole show today, that the way Clemson's doing it hasn't been hurting their playoff chances, hasn't been hurting their votes for the committee. So you have to think of it as a whole. Clemson's matchups with major programs, to me, have made big steps for their momentum. And adding in another ACC game really doesn't, I don't see how it helps their momentum. I don't see how it strengthens their brand. If anything, it hurts more than it helps. I hate to say that, other ACC teams, but I would say it to your face. And if I get on the squad show again next week, I will say it to your face. You don't help out my strength of schedule. You don't help out my brand. You got to get more money in the pot and have more success. Clemson, if you were me, and if I were me, which I am me, and I'm going to choose a 9th ACC game or still having partnerships like teams with the SEC, I'm taking the partnerships. Let the rest of the ACC figure out how to compete, and then maybe talk to me later on. But that's my story. That's how I feel about it. Hopefully you've enjoyed the show today. We've covered a lot from the playoff format. I'd love to get your feedback. If you're listening on podcast, go follow me over on X at The Morgan T Show. You can talk to me there. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also get into the comments as well. And I wanted to also just say how much I appreciate everyone tuning in every week, every day, every week. And I'm looking at the numbers. And, you know, one reason why I wanted to join Locked On Clemson and Locked On Network is because of all the support and help that they would have me build a great show where all I had to do is focus on being a good host for you. And we are building something big here. I'm really excited about it. The numbers show that we're growing the YouTube channel. We're growing the podcast. So I just wanted to say I couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much. As we continue to grow, it keeps giving me that fire to continue to go and build more shows for you. So I really appreciate all the love and support. And I'll see you in, what is it now? June. Man, this is the end of my 4th month. I'll see you in June. Now, June and July are kind of our off-season months. So you'll typically see like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday in June instead of a Monday through Friday in June and July. So be aware that we may have less shows because it's the off season, but still going to have great content for you here on Locked On Clemson. I look forward for you to see you back here. And I am ready for the season. Spot the ball for sure. Thank you so much. We'll see you next month, next week. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you at the top of the hill.